So I think I'm the only uranium story here, so this is going to be more interesting for you. I think we're also one of the smaller companies here. We kept about $8 million, but that means that there's the most upside too. So I want you to leave the room and go back and put us on your watch screen. Cauldron's been around a while. Some of you may remember us. It's a turnaround story. So historically, a uranium company in 2017, Mr. McGowan in WA in all his wisdom bans uranium mining. He grandfathered in 4 projects. We were the 5th. So the share price went from 30 cents to 1 cent. The company has since spent 5 years in the wilderness under a different management team, bought some assets which were frankly not that great, and I came in about 8 months ago with a whole new team and we're turning around the business. So new strategy, new team, new assets, new branding that Jane did, and a new future. Last week we had about 100 times our usual trading volume go through. Today we're at 35 million shares I just checked, which is again up about 10 times what you'd normally see. So there's a lot going on and I'll just run through it quickly. New team, my chairman is a guy called Ian Mulholland. Now if you want to know someone who has a track record in exploration, Ian has won Explorer of the Year twice. There are not many people that have done that. Myself, I've got a background in nuclear in the UK, and I approved and financed Australia's, actually the Southern Hemisphere's, first radioactive waste repository. So I've got a bit of a background in RAD, and I've got a bit of a background in getting the WA government to do things that it doesn't necessarily want to do. So uranium is currently banned in WA, mining, but it won't be for much longer. And I think, you know, with a lot going on in uranium and nuclear and AUKUS, the current policy of not allowing uranium mining in WA, yet the WA government home porting 3 of the nuclear subs just off Perth, is inconsistent at best, hypocrisy at worst. So there's a lot going on in that space at the minute. I'll get back into uranium in a sec. So we've got 2 core assets, our uranium asset in WA and a nickel asset that we've bought in the West Yilgarn. For all the Chalice investors or anyone that was invested in Chalice, we're chasing Julimar style mineralisation. We are probably where Chalice was 3 years ago. We've got Aeromag, we've done inversion modelling, we've just run an EM survey. Those results are out. I so hope to have them today, Jane, but I don't. Those results will be out, next week or so. So we'll see how we go there, and we intend on drilling as soon as the crops are finished. It's not a good year up in the West Yilgarn for farming, actually, so they should be cropping in mid-November and we can be drilling by late November. So that's very exciting. Put a few holes in there, off to the races. We have 1,500 square kilometres of land out there in the West Yilgarn. It's the biggest contiguous project out there, actually bigger than Julimar. A number of our neighbours have signed agreements looking for lithium out there as well. We've got pegmatites on the land. Haven't made much of a deal about it yet. But, you know, you could see us start looking for that. But I don't want to say that we're a lithium story because I find the nickel more interesting, and then, you know, let's talk about uranium. Someone said that lithium was the most structurally short commodity in the world. I'd actually one-up them and say uranium is. I have never seen the uranium industry and the market imbalance be so out of whack. There is a perfect storm of favourable factors that have been coming together. Nuclear is finally seen as green around the world, even by the greenies, in Europe at least, and the Canadians. Our greens have got a little while to go. But nuclear is green. Secondary sources have basically dried up. So the uranium market has been surviving on secondary sources for the last 10 years. They're gone. We have massive increases in demand. We have issues around the stability and the acceptability of Russian supply. Africa's not looking great. And you've just had Cameco come out and say, actually, quite surprisingly, they're short £2.8 million next year, and they're going to have to buy in the spot market to cover. The last factor is you've got Sprott, which is a physical uranium trust looking to get back to net asset value. They're going to buy in the spot market. Again, sending shivers through the rest of the utilities that are looking for spot. So you've seen uranium go up to basically 10-year highs now, 64 overnight. It moved from 55 to 60, it took a while. 60 to 65 is happening very quickly. 65 to 70 plus will take not very long at all. Incentive pricing to get new uranium into the market is looking at 75 plus. So there's been a huge amount of interest in uranium, and that's what's driven our sort of 100 times volume increase of trading over the last week. And we did get a speeding ticket from the ASX on Monday. I responded to the ASX by writing a 13-page essay on what was going on in uranium. And I tried to submit it, and then the good old listings manager is like, oh, you can't actually answer the question. Just put down a few bullet points. So we actually had to put out something fairly benign, but lo and behold, the next day we still had 50 million shares go through, which is good. So you're seeing a lot more liquidity come into us. My final point, I guess, is the company's prior history wasn't good. I want to own up to that. And their shareholder and stakeholder engagement were terrible. It was non-existent. So on every announcement, I put my personal mobile phone number. My email is always there. You can always call me. I will respond. I'm trying to be the most transparent and approachable CEO on the ASX. And I think there's a really exciting future for Cauldron, and we are so cheap. So from a JORC pounds in the ground basis, if you value our nickel project as zero, we are at 18 cents a pound. Now that compares, Duncan's not in the room, is he? That compares to Boss, who are doing the honeymoon restart. They're capped at $18 a pound. Now the reason that's interesting is because both our deposits are paleo channel, both are about 100 metres underground, both are similar size, and both are ISL leachable, which means they're cheap to develop, cheap to operate. The difference is that we're in WA and he's in South Australia and he can progress his project. So I'm not saying we're going to go from 18 cents to 18 bucks a pound overnight, but we are going north of 18 cents. There's an extremely good macro environment, and the WA government is not as stable as it once was. It's pretty unpopular. They're doing a really good job at kicking own goals. I made a joke to look at Sportsbet. When Mr McGowan was in power, the state daddy, the odds were 14 to 1 on a change of government. The day he left, they went to 9 to 1. After the ridiculous heritage laws, they were below 4 to 1. And actually, good old Mr Stokes put out a survey in the West the other week that said if the election had been held that day, the Libs would have won. Now, the reason that's interesting is because it's known that the Libs are pro-uranium mining. Down there, got it from the horse's mouth. The other thing that people may not know is that uranium ban is not a legislative ban, it is a policy ban. So you don't have to change legislation, you just simply have the red pen of the mining minister. It can be changed without control of the upper house. It's important in WA because, like many places, the upper house is full of weirdos. And it can be quite hard to get contentious legislation through. So they're very, very, very keen on uranium. They're not sure they were going to make it an election issue, though, because they didn't know if they'd win Labor votes because, the Labor left is a bit ideological. So we're putting out some survey results, some polling. It has been released nationally. And it's interesting because it shows that obviously almost every Liberal voter supports uranium mining. But half of the Labor voters that responded on that poll are pro-uranium mining, over half actually. And what was interesting, 34% of Greens voters in WA were pro-uranium mining as well. So I think it is an election issue, and it's very interesting to see how all this develops. And keep an eye on us, because as the probability of a change in government increases, our share price will skyrocket. Thank you.